assault awareness is the focus for this week's Eye on Northeast Kansas podcast. Welcome in. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. Eye on Northeast Kansas is where we recap the top interviews you heard over the past week or so on our Eye on Northeast Kansas TV show. You can watch it streaming live 4 o'clock Central Time, Monday through Friday from our WIBW TV studios in Topeka, Kansas. And we are now sharing some interviews on this episode that took place over the past month. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It is a key issue in our communities, one that's extremely important to address. And every April, we take time on Eye on Northeast Kansas to invite in guests from around our area and around our state who not only are advocating to make sure that victims and survivors are protected, but also making sure our entire communities stay safe and bringing them together. And that really was a key for this year's Sexual Assault Awareness Month activities that have been going around with organizations all around our state. The Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence is key in helping us make connections and ensuring that people are connected as they work to address this issue. Starting off the month, Mike McGraw from KCSDV joined us, along with Becca Spielman and Emily Stills. They both work for the YWCA of Northeast Kansas Center for Safety and Empowerment. They said preventing and dealing with sexual assault first starts with everyone understanding what it is. My co-anchor, David Oliver, filled in that day to lead the conversation.
Thank you all for coming in today. It's such an important month and an important topic. Mike, let's talk about the overarching message this month and kind of what we're wanting folks to get involved with in terms of kind of talking about this important issue.
It really is important to highlight it, especially now. We work with 24 domestic and sexual violence agencies across the state of Kansas and our tribal partners. And what we're calling on everybody to do is recognize that we have to be together when we respond to sexual violence, both from a prevention perspective and also where Becca and her team are responding after the violence has occurred.
Sure. The community conversation is really a key component, I have to imagine. The YWCA has always done so much surrounding this issue to kind of raise awareness and build coalitions, if you will. Tell me more about your efforts this month.
Absolutely. So one of our biggest efforts or activities that we do every year is an annual fundraiser. And so we had the opportunity to talk a little bit about that with Melissa previously, but a lot of it is bringing awareness into the community about these issues, going out and talking with different professionals and the public about how often these things are happening within our community.
Sure. What do you hope that we can accomplish, Emily, this month in terms of just a public awareness and taking a stand?
Just what Mike said, it's about all of us working together. It's about us coming together and just supporting each other. The victims need that.
Yeah, and I think it's important in some of the information I was reading about your coalition and things, you were talking about it's important for us to take accountability. Until we as a society kind of focus on accountability, we may not see the needle move, if you will.
We won't, because the reality is we still have far too many conversations that are focused on the old cliche of what were they wearing, what were they doing, and not enough about the fact that sexual violence is not about sex, it's about control. And if we recognize that, then we can start to recognize that people are being targeted for reasons that aren't about any of the justifications that get thrown around.
And I think we obviously know victims can be anyone. You know, stats tend to suggest that 1 in 2 women are victims. 1 in 3 men are also victims. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's becoming more familiar in terms of those statistics. We see more and more men come forward because we're having conversations about how it can happen across all genders. And so men are starting to feel safe to be able to disclose these things as well.
Yeah, it feels like maybe this really has kind of come more to the forefront in terms of our ability as a community to talk about this, because so many years ago people didn't talk about it. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It continues to be a major problem where people question whether or not they actually experience sexual violence, but also question, are they justified in asking for help? And so that's one of the key messages this month, is that you do deserve help. You can get help. And it's a phone call away if you want it.
Let's talk about some of those resources. Becca, you want to let me know about some of the things that folks can utilize if they know someone who needs some help?
Absolutely. So we work with victims and survivors of sexual violence as well as other forms of relationship violence. All of our services are free and confidential. They're available to folks of all genders. And primarily the way that we encourage folks to reach out is through our 24/7 hotline. And so that number is 1-888-822-2983.
Okay.
But we provide a lot of emotional support and care. Last year alone, we served 241 survivors through sexual violence advocacy, 74 hospital advocacy requests where we went and met with the individual while they were going through an exam. But we do counseling, support groups, court advocacy. We offer all different types of support and care.
And just if you want to weigh in, Mike or Emily, I have to imagine when people come to you all and they get the help and they find out that they're not alone, there has to be a great sense of relief that you hear people express to you.
Relief, overwhelming, it's an emotional event, and it's something where, as an advocate, the teams are dealing with that every day, but it's also something where it reminds you how isolating these experiences are, and that also people seek to isolate.
Yeah. Such an important topic, and we're going to be doing more with this topic as we move through April here on ION Northeast Kansas. Melissa has other segments planned. Mike McGraw, Becca Spielman, Emily Stills, thanks for being here, and thanks for all you do to shine a light on this very important topic.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, we appreciate your time today.
Once everyone gets on the same page and learning what sexual assault can look like, we can start to act to make changes. Kathy Ray is with the Crisis Center in Manhattan, Kansas. She joined us along with Tess Ramirez, who's with Protecting Kansas Children from Sexual Predators. Welcome to the both of you. And you do really represent the spectrum of who can become victims of sexual violence. So Kathy, you primarily are working with adults.
Yes.
What is sexual violence among adults?
Well, sexual violence can take many forms. We know that about 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men are victims of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. So that can be anything from sexual touching, degrading comments that are sexual in nature, all the way to rape and sexual assault, the things that we often think about when we're talking about sexual violence. So really, it can impact anyone, regardless of age, gender, race. It really doesn't have any boundaries. But one of the things that we know about sexual violence is the majority of the perpetrators are known to the victim. So we often have this myth that we need to be afraid of the stranger in the park, those kinds of things. But really, most of predators or the people who perpetrate sexual violence know the victim.
Is this true of children as well? And when we talk about sexual violence among children, what are we talking about?
Yes, absolutely. It mirrors a lot of the adult aspects. However, it is a little bit different in that obviously a child is very vulnerable and they typically get groomed by someone obviously who's much older than them. So like in my instance, I was 14 and I was groomed by my cheerleading coach. Someone my parents knew and trusted, and he seemed like a great guy, but he wasn't, and he was secretly grooming me. So it's people that parents don't even expect their kids to be unsafe with. It's people they like. So it's something that parents need to be really, really on the lookout for, especially if they're seeing changing behaviors from their kids.
And you just threw out a very personal connection there, Tess, just like, because that is what your group is, survivors seeking to support other survivors.
Absolutely.
If you had to even maybe look back now, or when people are looking at children, what might be some warning signs that we might spot? And children, teenagers are still children.
Absolutely, absolutely. So warning signs, changes in behavior, regression, things if an older child starts wetting the bed again, if they start acting not themselves or isolating themselves. So like after I was being abused, I remember just like staring at the floor, refusing to make eye contact with people because I was so ashamed, even though I didn't do anything wrong. Right. It was him. But that is one of the big things that our group focuses on is, so like every Friday we post on Facebook parenting tips, signs to look for. That way we can keep our community safe.
And what about for adults? Mm-hmm. What might we notice in maybe friends or loved ones that's a sign something wasn't quite right?
Well, I think oftentimes, although there's not the same grooming process, there is sort of this trusting relationship that is built when it's someone who is known to the victim. A lot of times, especially if it is a family member, a close family friend, things like that, those relationships, they take advantage of that, and Predators, people who perpetrate sexual violence, often will target people who they perceive as vulnerable. And what that vulnerability is can be a number of things, anything from a disability to intoxication. But they seek out that vulnerability and take advantage of it.
So the big thing is getting help. And I'm going to hold up your signs here because you have a hotline on here. If we
Yes.
notice something, if we need help, or we notice something for a loved one, this is one resource. What is the number,
Absolutely.
text, what do we do?
Yeah, so this is Safeline Kansas. That is the statewide domestic violence and sexual assault helpline. So for anyone in Kansas, whether they're a victim or survivor themselves, or they know someone and would like to get some support, this is the number to call. We also have a text feature, so we know that not everyone wants to make the phone call, but maybe they want to text. Maybe it's safer to text. We have that text feature now available for Safeline Kansas
And
as
I'm going to
well.
put this on WIBW.com after the show as
Perfect.
well. For children tests, what can we do? Who should we be talking to if we think something isn't right?
Lots of different people, actually. So for kids, it gets a little more complicated, right? Depends on who the perpetrator is. But I and my co-director will say, you keep telling until someone listens, right? Because a lot of time when the kid first tells, they don't always get the right response. And so we would recommend reporting to DCF, calling the police if a kid should tell, their teacher, their counselor, anybody that they can get to listen, because we want to make sure that those kids are getting help immediately.
Absolutely. It's so very important. Tess, thank you, first of all, for sharing your very personal story along with the information. Kathy, thank you for all you do as well. All these resources will be put on WIBW.com. Thanks again, ladies.
Thank you.
As you might already have guessed, a lot of people who work in this arena are survivors themselves or know someone who has been touched by sexual violence. Survivors' voices are key as we work to address the issue so that people realize that real people are on the other side of this. Katie Blackburn with Jana's campaign and Kim Bergman, a survivor herself, who also works with Protecting Kansas Children from Sexual Predators and is part of the KCSDV Survivor Advisory Council, were next to address the issue. Welcome to both of you, and both of you advocate for this very thing as survivors and friends and loved ones of survivors as well. So Jana's campaign, Katie, tell us what that whole organization is about and how it got started.
Sure. Well, Jana's campaign is a national education and violence prevention organization. We work mainly in middle schools and high schools, on college campuses, and with community organizations to prevent relationship violence, so domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking before it happens. It was created in honor of Jana Mackey, who lost her life to violence perpetrated by an ex-boyfriend. Jana was an advocate herself and working to create change at the state level here in Kansas, and actually was attending law school at the time that she was murdered. And so because of who Jana was, but also because of the work that her parents, Doctors Christy and Kurt Brungart, did as professionals teaching at Fort Hays State University, they created Jana's campaign just about 15 years ago.
And that's your small world connection here. You
Correct.
didn't know Jana, but you knew her
Correct.
parents.
Yes, yeah. I was very privileged and lucky to be educated by them.
And so that there's your personal connection. The work that you do, Kim, it's inspired by a personal story. What happened to you, as much as you care to share?
Yes, so I was sexually abused by my gymnastics coach when I was 12 years old. And, at the time I didn't know it was happening to anyone else. And throughout the years I've recently learned that I am up to one of 19 victims that were all abused by the same coach.
Why is it important to you to share that story publicly?
I think sharing our stories publicly helps others to feel comfortable coming forward and sharing theirs. And the more that we come forward and share, the more it helps prevent others from being abused. That if we can identify predators in the community, that can help stop the chain of abuse.
It's one of those things too, I feel like when we tell people you need to come forward, you need to speak about it, but then if we don't allow survivors and empower survivors to share their voices, it's like, well, but I thought you wanted me to talk about it. I mean, do you see that kind of double standard when we think about, we want people to come forward, but yet, gosh, this is such a sensitive topic, let's not talk about it.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I think that there's stigma behind reporting, and so it is important that we do uplift survivor stories because we need more folks to come forward and report that they've experienced these issues so we can better understand them and the nuances that come from these issues to better prevent them as well.
And I prefer to say, Kim, you are not a victim, you are a survivor because you have survived something. When people see you, what do you hope they see and what do you want them to take away from hearing your story?
I hope that they see that it's okay to come forward and that talking about this can help protect future children. We really hope to inspire children to be able to come forward earlier. Studies show that the average survivor doesn't come forward until they're until adulthood. and that's often later in their 50s. We hope to teach children that it's safe to have safe adults to talk to. One of the things that we're really working on this year is trying to bring Aaron's Law to Kansas. Aaron's Law would require that students K through 12 be taught about body safety awareness and help teachers how to handle disclosures, because studies show that when children are taught about these things, that they're more likely to disclose that if abuse has occurred. So in my situation, I was 12. A big event happened when I went to gymnastics camp, and I was really upset about what had happened. I came home and told my best friend, and neither one of us knew what to do. We were 12. We didn't understand the magnitude of what had happened, and that's all that happened.
For anyone listening, if they have someone come to them and say this happened, what would be the first thing they should do?
To help that person to feel comfortable disclosing, one thing that Aaron's Law does teach is to teach children that if your friend tells you a secret, that you can tell them it's okay to not keep that secret, and that your friends might be upset at first, but that you're really helping them in the long run.
Some secrets need to be told. And what about for relationship violence, Katie? What should we do if someone comes to us and says they're experiencing this in their relationship?
Sure. First is to believe them, but then also connect them with local advocacy agencies. So KCSDV, the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence, has a wonderful map that shows the advocacy agencies that are available for different counties and the folks within those counties. I did want to note, though, just because Jana's campaign is based out of Hayes and we're a rural community, that sometimes there are additional barriers to survivors coming forward in those rural areas, just because of distance, lack of resources. They might not remain anonymous if they choose to disclose.
Everybody knows everybody.
Yes, and just that fear is really kind of instilled and kept in those communities. And so making sure that we're creating environments where people do feel comfortable, but also making sure that we can get them to the right resources, even if they are miles away.
Well, the bravest thing you can do is come forward, and so we appreciate both of you. And let's connect you with some of those resources. She mentioned the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence has that map, has a bunch of resources. Go to kcsdv.org. They also have the phone numbers for you to call 24/7. And Jana's campaign is at janascampaign.org. I'll get all of this on WIBW.com right after the show as well. Katie, Kim, thank you both so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Survivors' voices have been key in building connected communities to address sexual violence. We'll continue that conversation in a moment when the Eye on Northeast Kansas podcast continues. Welcome back to our Eye on Northeast Kansas podcast, where this week we are focusing on Sexual Assault Awareness Month. One key theme for this month when it comes to advocacy groups is building connected communities in order to address sexual violence. Gail Hunter is a survivor herself. She also serves on the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence Survivor Advisory Council. She also has started her own group, organizing various awareness month events during this month, including she had a self-defense class that she sponsored. Hannah Figs-Horde is the part of the Mavis project with KCSTV. That is a project that works to address maternal violence. They both shared some very interesting perspectives. Thank you both for being here. And these are such important topics, and also important because your words are coming from a dual perspective as survivors yourselves. And so, Gail, as much as you care to share, what happened? And then in the aftermath of that, what did you come to learn? What was the most confusing part for you navigating that post period?
I was drugged and attacked 4.5 years ago, and afterwards was very confusing, not knowing where to go, what to do, who to talk to. And I have a personality that will seek out whatever I need most of the time. So it was a search. A search was on. And I was just lucky enough to be able to connect with organizations that could help me through, and therapists. And
what is missing in terms of connecting survivors, but then connecting organizations with each other so everybody knows where to go?
Yeah, I think there definitely needs to be more communication between organizations, because there isn't any one thing that is going to solve, if that's even possible, this epidemic. And so it's going to take a team. And it's very complex. It seems simple, but it's not. Whether you report and how you're treated, or going to hospitals, or finding the right therapist to help you through your journey, it's a lot.
What did you find, Hannah, with your situation?
Well, I just want to speak to what Gail is saying, and there are some technical strategies that the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence works together with the member programs across the state to implement, one of those being sexual assault response teams, high-risk response team, coordinated community response teams, which are really all about bringing those players. So making sure there's a voice from the hospital, the law enforcement, the attorney, your county attorney's office, making sure that all of those players can come together to collaborate and make sure that everyone is responding in the way that's going to most protect survivors and treat them in a trauma-informed manner, kind of as Gail was mentioning. And for myself, I never reported. I knew violence has been a part of my life as long as I've been on this planet. And so when I was assaulted and had maybe the option to report, I knew we don't do that, because it will end up hurting you more than it will help you. And luckily, I've been a part of some of these solutions throughout my decade plus. And I've worked with amazing law enforcement officer, amazing advocates. I've been in this field long enough to know that we can't change one piece of the system unless we're all coming together.
And that's where the Mavis Project comes in as well, which is very eye-opening, because you think people are expecting a baby. It's a happy time, everybody's working together, and it's kind of this whole honeymoon period all over again. And that's not the case.
Well, a lot of people don't realize this, but in Kansas, homicide is actually the second leading cause of death, right behind motor vehicle accidents. Before any kind of obstetric cause of death is homicide. And most often those homicides are perpetrated by your partner. And there's not enough research behind why it happens, and the connectedness with reproductive coercion or sexual violence and intimate partner violence, how it all plays a piece together. But efforts like this and bringing all these voices to the table definitely make a difference.
And I imagine that's also an especially important time for people to know the resources available, because there's a fear always of leaving the relationship, and now it's not just for yourself, it's for yourself and your unborn child, and letting ladies know that there's a place they can go.
Absolutely, and I think it's really important to note that pregnancy and postpartum is never going to be the ideal time to leave a relationship. And so as a responding, a supportive person in that person's life, it's making sure that they are in the driver's seat and they're the ones making the decision. We know that when you leave a relationship, it's the point when you are the most likely to be killed. And so that is really important, that we aren't forcing somebody to leave a situation before they're ready.
But the resources are there if you need them. For you, Gail, message that you want all survivors to know.
I started an organization called It's Time to Shine, and this is our 3rd year. And survivors need to know that you're not alone, that we believe you. You are believed, and that there is support out there, and that's what we do with our thing, along with self-defense. We have every resource I can find in the whole area. So,
there you go. Check out Gail's site. But here are a couple of resources for you as well. The Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. They can get you in touch with who you need to know. And if you do need assistance, that 24/7 text line, you can text the word SAFE to 847-411. We'll have it on WIBW.com as well. Gail and Hannah, thank you both so very much. Appreciate you and all that you do to support others.
Thank you.
Of course, the goal of all of this, the reason they're working to raise awareness, is to create safer communities and a safer tomorrow. Rachel Freeman works with SOS Inc. That is an organization in Emporia that serves Lyon and several other surrounding counties. And Michelle McCormick is the executive director of the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
As we talk about Sexual Assault Awareness Month and really bringing communities together, in your area, Rachel, that must be very important. How wide of an area does SOS serve?
So we serve 5 different counties. So we have Lyon, Chase, Morris, Coffee, and Osage. So we serve all of those counties, which is actually a pretty big chunk.
It's a very big, wide geographic area. So how much do you rely on communities really buying into the message and the work that you do?
It's a big thing, because if people don't know about SOS or our other, we have other buildings, I guess you would say, in like Osage and Burlington. And if people didn't know about that, then they wouldn't know how to get help. And so we want to make sure that people are aware of Sexual Assault Awareness Month and they're aware of us, so we can spread that information with them.
And how important is the message, too, just to realize that sexual assault and these types of crimes and these incidents don't just happen in big cities or just on large college campuses?
They happen everywhere. I see so much of it in our counties, in Emporia itself. I work with a lot of teens, a lot of young adults who have experienced sexual assault, so it's a big one.
Absolutely, which I'm sure something, Michelle, your work at KCSDV, being able to really have communities buy in, because in a big city you think there are a lot of resources. How much of a challenge is it to get those resources to rural areas, those less populated areas?
Yeah, I think it can be a challenge, right? It really is dependent upon making sure the relationships exist for the folks who come together in order to tackle this issue. Like, we often talk about what are called sexual assault response teams, and we travel the state, our staff travel the state in order to try to build capacity for communities in order to have that kind of collaborative approach. But we know it's even bigger than that, because it's dependent upon folks like who do prevention education in schools or healthcare providers recognizing what's going on in order, like Rachel said, to get folks connected to services.
And then the underlying goal here is safety. The work that all these organizations are doing, it really is about safety.
Absolutely. I mean, I look forward to the day when we are exclusively preventing this issue from happening, so that's important. But also, until that time, we need services to be top-notch, and we need folks know how to get folks to those services so that they can hopefully get to a point where things are safer and they're recovering from that.
There are a lot of headlines these days about the Department of Justice grants that organizations like yourself sometimes get, maybe your partner organizations get them. What is the latest on what you're facing? Are you losing any grant funding? Are you still waiting to hear? And how much is what you're able to do, the outreach rural areas are able to do, dependent on that funding?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a very tumultuous time because, of course, we're hearing about these grants being terminated. Folks are literally getting an email and told that day to cease operations immediately for that particular grant. So far, thankfully, no one in our network has received that notification, but of course it's having the impact of making us all feel nervous. We are doing a lot of advocacy, trying to make sure that our congressional leaders at the federal level know the importance of these services. We are still waiting to see, for example, the Office on Violence Against Women is a DOJ agency, and they removed their grant notices and have not put them back. They got removed in February. They should be out now so that we could start applying for new funding, and that hasn't happened yet. And so we're anxious for that. And then, to make sure that they do come out, and then so that programs like ours and those who benefit from those programs can continue to be funded at the same level.
So should you lose this federal source, Rachel, this means making it even more important to get the community to buy in and support you. So what is your message as far as the value that you provide to people in your community? Why is it important that you're there?
Just because we're there to help survivors. At the end of the day, that's our job. And if we're not there, then a lot of the times these people don't have other supports than us. A lot of times people don't want their families involved, or they may not have any families, so we're the only support system they have.
And they didn't ask to become a victim that starts the journey to survivorship. Yeah. So here's some of the resources that we have. If you're out there, this is hitting home with you at all. SOS in Emporia. You can find their information at soskansas.com, or you can text SOSKS to 847-411. Those are the same digits. If you need the statewide coalition, you can text SAFE to 847-411, or check out the kcsdv.org website for information on all that they have. Certainly an issue. We'll continue reaching out, touching base to see where things are and where that means you'll be making asks of your community or moving forward with things that you're able to do. Appreciate you two being here, and thank you so much for working with us as we work to raise awareness during Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Appreciate you both.
Thank you.
As they face the future, perhaps needing to adjust how some of their funding will happen, how some of their services and programs will continue, they continue working. They say sexual assault awareness happens not just over the course of 1 month, but year-round. You can check out KCSDV if you would like to learn more about some resources, if you need help 24/7. You can also find the links, the video for these interviews, and of course all the interviews that you see on Eye on Northeast Kansas on WIBW.com. You'll also find those links along with our studio selfies on my Facebook page. That's WIBW Melissa Bruner. Until next time, we'll see you on the Red Couch.